Hello and welcome to the Wolves Squad Show. I'm Sam Ekstrom. Today we've got end of season superlatives as we gear up for the playoffs.
Parker Fox with KFAN and the Big Ten Network. And I'm going to tell you why Denver and Nikola Jokic aren't as scary as an opponent as you may think.
I'm Jack Borman, co-host of the Locked On Wolves postcast with my man Luke Inman. And the We Believe Wolves are back.
Julia Daniels, Kira Levin, sports anchor and reporter. Same record as last season, but a totally different team. Let's talk about it.
This is Locked On's Wolves Squad Show, the twice-a-week show where Timberwolves talk gets real. No filters, no fluff. Just raw takes, sharp opinions, and straight-up passion for the game. The way only Locked On Podcast Network knows how. Let's drop some dimes and squad up. The Wolves Squad Show starts now.
Fired up to be here on a Tuesday. It's playoff week here on the Wolves Squad Show. Welcome in. Thank you for watching us streaming live on Locked On Wolves. On today's show, the Wolves draw the Nuggets. It could have been the Lakers. I think the Nuggets wanted it to be the Lakers, to be honest with you. We'll talk about that crazy final day of the regular season and, of course, start previewing the Nuggets. Is there a level of concern over the way the Wolves finished this season that wasn't present last year when the Wolves entered the playoffs as the 6th seed? We'll have some fun with end-of-season superlatives and discuss the differences between the Wolves of 2 years ago that beat the Nuggets and the Wolves of now that face the Nuggets in the first round. It's Jack, it's Julia, it's Parker, it's myself, Sam Ekstrom. We're with you for the next hour. So the final day of the regular season was weird. It was weird. Jack and I did the postcast after that one, and we barely talked about the game other than KG was there, which was really cool. But the Wolves played their bench. Of course, New Orleans played their bench. You've got a game that you're watching with the Nuggets and the Spurs, Parker, and they're playing their benches, and it doesn't seem like either team really wants to win that bad. And the Lakers are over here playing the Jazz, and the Jazz are tanking. Like, all of the seeding came down to the G League versions of all those teams.
You're exactly right. It's funny when it comes to that way, right? Like, you play 82 games and you would think most things would be solved or resolved before that point. And I actually kind of just had a fun time looking through kind of box scores and rosters and trying to remember where this guy went to college or how many times this guy transferred or did I play against this guy. So I had a fun time with that, but the games were fun too. And I think it showed kind of towards the end that Denver is really trying to plan out what they wanted to do. And I think you're right with that intro. Maybe they didn't want to play Minnesota, and rightfully so. But nonetheless, the matchup is here. I'm excited for it. I think there's a lot of fun talkers. There's a lot of interesting injury bits, and maybe guys aren't as healthy as they could be. But that's an 82 game season. That's the playoffs. And at the end of the day, you have to put your best foot forward. So for me, that last day was fun, and I'm really looking forward to this week as well. These play-in games, obviously, it doesn't affect what the Timberwolves have in terms of their first round. But I think there's some interesting matchups, especially in the East, that I'm looking forward to watching.
Yeah, Julia, it was a little tantalizing, though, for that moment in time where it looked like the Nuggets were going to rest everybody. And then Jokic ends up playing the first half, but it didn't seem like a game they were taking seriously. Very easily could have fallen to the 4, and then the Wolves could have gotten the hobbled Lakers in round 1. And we don't know the status of Doncic. We don't know the status of Reeves, but it's still, I think, it represented a series that you wouldn't, maybe, like, who knows how it plays out, but it could have been a series where you win in 5, right? Like last year.
Yeah.
It could have been a series where you don't have to exert all of your energy to win the series. It feels like the Nuggets are that way. It's going to be a battle against Denver. There's a path where maybe they could have handled the Lakers a little more easily.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I had conversations with some people inside the Wolves organization. I won't name who, but off camera, they were very much rooting for a Lakers matchup. They were hoping that the Lakers would somehow pull it out. I do think it's interesting. It is such an interesting finish for all of these teams because you do have seeding on the line, but then they're all, I think at the end of the day, all of the teams were mostly worried about staying healthy rather than worrying about the seeding. And so it's interesting when you even go and look back at ESPN has all of their recaps and everything. And 3/4 of the recap for this Pelicans Wolves game is just all about KG making his comeback. And then they're like, oh, by the way, Jingles, he started and he had 15 points and 10 assists. So it was a weird way for the season to end. But I think at some point you kind of have to pick your priority. And the priority for everybody, it looks like at this moment in time, was like just staying healthy, because the games that really start to matter are coming up obviously this weekend. And so, I know that the Wolves were definitely hoping for the Lakers, because who wouldn't at this point, because of the state that they're in injury wise, but Denver's going to be tough. Denver obviously has won the regular season series. I think the Wolves are going to have to really dig deep in this one. And I think it's interesting because that Christmas loss that the Wolves had to the Nuggets, they took that so personally headed into the new year. And, that kind of, they went on that really great winning streak right after that. And so I think they take these matchups personally, obviously, but especially when it comes to the Nuggets, they know how to really find some motivation when it comes to facing this team. I just also think it's an interesting matchup, because they're going to have to really rely, I feel like, on Io and Bones too offensively to come off the bench and make some offensive stretches for them. And so, because the Nuggets don't have great rim protection as it is. And so that's something that they're going to have to rely on too. And I think the Nuggets also, they're going to have to take advantage of the fact that they don't have a great defense. And they're going to have to also find their character. The Wolves are going to have to get back to their character of playing great defense against, obviously, Joker. That's something that's kind of a given when you're facing the Nuggets. So it's gonna be interesting. I know obviously the Nuggets are favorites in this one, but I think you never count the Wolves out when it comes to the postseason, especially when it's Denver.
Heavy favorites. We've seen them at -400 in some places. Wolves are like +250 to win this series. And I think there's probably a chip on the shoulder card that the Wolves can play going into this series as such heavy underdogs. And Jack, you've been vocal on this show saying, hey, now, like, let's slow the roll on the Nuggets. They are not 100% healthy either. The Wolves still represent, some good matchups in that series. But that being said, what is the difference between a series against these Lakers and now a series against these Nuggets? Like, how much more manageable could that LA series have been?
Yeah, I think it would have been very manageable, just considering that you look at the two best players for the Lakers probably not going to play very much, if at all, in that first round series. I don't know that the European injection powers that Luka and Austin Reeves were subject to the last couple of weeks is going to be enough to get them right in time to play. So I think that's definitely a bummer that the Wolves weren't able to kind of get that first round free card or free space, if you will. But I just think that with the Nuggets, everything is about Nikola Jokic and Jamal Murray. And that, you look at that Christmas game specifically, I think the two of those guys combined for damn near 100 points in that game and 25 assists or something like that. And so, while they didn't get a whole lot else from somebody or from guys not named Tim Hardaway Jr. So I think that the biggest thing for the Wolves is just going to be, can you prevent, Jamal Murray from having those huge, 25, 30-point games where, he has 17 to 20 points in a quarter, like we've become accustomed to seeing out of Jamal Murray. And so I think, with Jokic, I think the Wolves have done a really good job of limiting him somewhat as a playmaker over their last, several matchups that they've had. And I think they've done a good job making it as tough as they can on him. And the biggest thing for the Wolves, I really liked what Julia had to say about Io and Bones. Like, I think the Wolves bench is significantly more dynamic than that of the Nuggets. And so I think if you run into a situation where, one of the top two scorers, whether it's, Jokic, Murray or Ant and Randall struggle, that I think the Wolves are much more well-equipped to be able to kind of cover for that. But the fact of the matter is the Nuggets' top two guys are just so overwhelmingly consistent as scorers that just creates such a problem for the Wolves. But the good news is that, they don't have, or they're not quite as dynamic offensively in the half court, I think, as they were a couple years ago with Michael Porter Jr., where, he could do so much coming off of screens and knocking down movement shots, taking that pump fake and 2 dribbles to get into the lane and elevate into the mid-range and score. I just think that Cam Johnson is a bit of a downgrade there just in terms of his offensive kind of dynamism. But so because of that, I think you're going to see Jaden McDaniels guard Jamal Murray and trust that he can impact that matchup. It did not go quite as well a couple years ago compared to when Nickeil Alexander-Walker guarded him, and you had some really special defensive highlights there. But I also think I would assume it was going to be a huge factor when it comes to guarding Jamal Murray, and it would not surprise me whatsoever if we saw I would assume would close a lot of these games so that he could guard Jamal Murray, and then maybe you get Jaden McDaniels sagging off of Aaron Gordon as just extra rim protection alongside Rudy Gobert. So it's going to be really fun to see how both these teams align defensively, just because both teams have guys that the other team just really cannot guard straight up one-on-one.
Looking back to the 7-gamer 2 years ago, Parker, Nikola Jokic averaged, this is just unbelievable, 29, 11, and 8 in that series. And it kind of felt like they contained him pretty well. He did not shoot the 3 well at all. Jokic shot 23% from 3 in that series. I recall Jamal Murray having a much harder time, and the stats would back that up. In fact, you remember game 2, Murray throws the towel on the floor. He was so frustrated. Probably should
at Mark Davis, not just on the floor. At Mark Davis.
What are we doing here? How is that not suspendable? He shot 40% in that series, 33% from 3. So the perimeter work against both Jokic and Murray, preventing the long-range shot, was pretty critical in that series. And a lot of that's going to come down to Jaden on Murray, which I think Jack forecast. And then, how far out on the perimeter does Rudy go to defend Jokic, get a hand in his face? I feel like it's going to come down to Rudy on Jokic in large part to see how well they can contain him.
I think you're right. And I don't know. I think it's one of those things where you have to throw different matchups, right? Like we know the IQ that Nikola Jokic plays with. We know the IQ that their whole team plays with. Like this isn't a team that just like gets streaky and gets hot and that's why they're good. Like this is a team that plays with high level IQ. The stuff they do on the offensive side of the ball is very precise. It's one of those things where when you're playing a team like this, you know exactly what they want to do. You know where Jokic wants to catch the ball. You know how they want to start and initiate their offense. But now you have to find ways to make it difficult. You have to find ways to deny passing lanes. You have to find ways to switch things up on pin down and off ball screens. And then when it comes to the ball screen type of stuff, you're probably going to have to switch things up. It's what you do defensively isn't going to work for a 7-game series. You're going to have to switch up matchups. You're going to have to switch up the way that you defend the pick and roll. And then I love Jack bringing up the Aaron Gordon bit. He hasn't shot the ball great. Now he's near 40% shooter from 3 on about 4.5 attempts per game, but I think that's something you're going to have to live with, right? It's something that you're going to have to pick your poison is how can we bring more rim protection inside, but also guard the 3-point line because we don't want to get beat on, same side help on the 3-point shot. So there's so many different factors throughout this series that we're going to see, but I think if you're Chris Finch, you have to be okay with being flexible and switching things up on the defensive side of the ball and maybe guys that are in your starting lineup aren't finishing games because of matchups and guys have to understand that and know that this is a team effort. So I think it's going to take a lot of flexibility from this Timberwolves team, but I do think it starts with the coaching staff, with the head coach Chris Finch and being able to be adaptable and find ways to win, especially on the defensive side of the ball.
Yeah, Julia, sometimes it's pretty simple. The difference between winning and losing in the NBA, today's NBA, can you shoot the 3, right? Denver is an excellent 3-point shooting team. They come in number 1 in 3-point percentage in this series. Wolves have struggled from 3 of late, especially second half of the season. It could be one of those series where it's inevitable that Denver's going to get hot. They're going to do their thing. They're going to be the number 1 3-point shooting team in at least a couple of these games. So if the Wolves can't answer that, if the Wolves have some of their very Timberwolvesian off nights from 3, I could see a couple games getting out of hand against this team. I'll be honest with you. And we saw it a couple of years ago when the Nuggets controlled, game 3, game 4, game 5 of that series because there is so much 3-point variance. So can the Wolves find some consistency from three that they've lacked in the second half of the season? That's going to be huge.
Yeah, and I also think it's we're sitting there watching the Wolves. What game was that last week? And some of our coworkers were like, "Why is Ann out there? Why is Ann out there? Wouldn't they want to rest him? When they want to figure out?" That was on Care on Friday.
Rockets game.
Yeah, and so many people in house were wondering, like, why is Ann out there? Why is Ann out there? And it's, you go back to explaining the injury and that, like, it's not going to get worse, but also he needs to get used to it. And then we saw more production out of him than we had seen in almost a month at that point. And so I think part of him getting so many minutes was trying to get him back out there, getting him back into his offensive flow too, just so that he's comfortable ahead of the postseason as well. And that's where Ant is going to be. He will be the key to this playoff matchup because they don't have somebody that matches up well with him, right? And so you need Ant to be shooting from beyond the arc better than anybody else is basically at this point. And they're also going to need other guys who shoot well. I mean, Jaden has to get his offensive production back up too, right? And they need Julius to do it. They need Io to do it. They need Bones to be able to do it off the bench. It's everybody has to be into their. I mean, this is something they've been talking about for 3 or 4 weeks now. Is they have got to figure out their offensive flow. Otherwise, they're screwed when it comes to this series. And so, hopefully that's something they're figuring out this week. But I do think they have an advantage in the fact that they have Anthony Edwards. I think that that's their number one advantage when it comes to this playoff matchup is that nobody matches up really well with him. But he has to be the star that he is. And, I mean, he's averaged over 30 points versus Denver in the entire regular season. So that's, good looking at it. But they still lost most of the games. And so everyone has to be firing on all cylinders, especially from three, because otherwise, like you said, Sam, it's going to be an uphill battle, but things have got to be going almost perfect, I feel like, for the Wolves at this point, in order for them to win this series. And I think that they have that in them, but I think that they've got to pull motivation and they've got to figure out how to just get back to their basics of finding pace and figuring out how they can, I don't know, connectivity is the word that Finchie's been using a lot. Connectivity. They've got to figure out their connectivity when it comes to this playoff matchup.
Yeah.
The only thing I'll add, Julia, to that too is the Wolves would have gotten fined if Ant did not play in that game because it was a national TV game and they also sat Randall. They also sat Rudy in that game. So that was a huge factor for why Ant played.
Oh, that's interesting. Good point. And it also explains why the Nuggets played Jokic in part.
That is correct. That's why he played on Sunday instead of Friday.
Jack, I was going to ask you in closing to the segment. Last year, the Wolves had just a very high percentage of playoff games where their shooting completely dried up. I'll give you some of the numbers. Game 2 against LA, 5 of 25 from 3. Game 5 against LA, 7 of 47. Game 1 against the Warriors, 5 of 29. Game 1 against the Thunder, 15 of 51. They totally blacked out from beyond the arc a lot in last postseason. Can you recall any particular, is it as simple as saying guys were cold shooting, or is there anything in particular that you remember that contributed to some of the abysmal shooting numbers?
Yeah, I vividly remember that game in LA that I was there for. There just wasn't a whole lot of kinetic energy in the offense. There wasn't a ton of ball movement. And it just felt like there were a lot of late clock grenades that then ended up getting put up. And I just think the more that the Wolves kind of are able to get out and run in transition, create some open threes that way, get some cross matches, drive, like Parker was talking about with the same side help, open corner threes. That was something that happened a lot in that Lakers series. And so I think for the Wolves, it's just about, how many 3, 4, 5 pass possessions can you get that result in, either an open slot 3 or an extra pass for a wide open corner 3. And I think a lot of that is just predicated by ball movement and player movement and playing with pace. And I think for the Wolves, they've got a lot of really good set shooters on this team, no question about it. So I would hope that there aren't going to be quite as many of those stinkers that you laid out. But, who knows? And the hope for the Wolves is that I think, if Dante doesn't shoot the ball well, all right, maybe Jaden and Io and Bones shoot the ball well. That you just got to hope that, everybody doesn't kind of stack their off nights together on the same night.
When we come back, I'll lay out some of the late season trends that are a little different than they were last year for the Wolves, and not for the better. We discuss that next on the Squad Show. We're brought to you today by TurboTax. It's tax time, but for a lot of us, the old way of doing taxes is a lot. Trying to book an appointment that's not the most convenient, sitting in a waiting room with a stack of papers, emailing back and forth and wondering if they really get your situation. But this year, you're getting a major upgrade. Intuit TurboTax now has in-person locations nationwide. You can meet face-to-face with a real tax expert, and your documents get uploaded straight to your TurboTax app on the spot. Just like that, you're done. Your TurboTax expert works to get you every dollar you deserve, while you get real-time notifications as you go about your day. It's the relief of walking in, meeting a real person, and walking out knowing your taxes are being handled right. Head to turbotax.com/local to find a store near you and book your appointment. Wolves Squad Show streaming live on Locked On Wolves audio, free and available wherever you get your podcasts. Locked On Wolves podcast feed. It's all part of the #1 sports podcast network, the Locked On Podcast Network. Ben Beacon will be with us on Thursday. He hosts Locked On Wolves. Be sure to check him out all week leading up to Game 1, Saturday, 2:30 p.m. Central on Prime against the Denver Nuggets. I've got the numbers for the Wolves this year compared to last year. April gets a little wonky because they benched a lot of guys, kind of coasting to the finish. So I just filtered out the month of March last year, month of March this year. And as Julia teased in the open, same record, 49-33, different way of getting there. Last year's Wolves cruised, surged to the finish. In March, they were third in winning percentage, second in scoring margin, third in three-point shooting, 10th fewest turnovers in the league. This March, Julia, 13th in win percentage, 16th in scoring margin, 21st in three-point percentage, 20th, different way of saying this, 8th most turnovers in the league. So last year they had 10th fewest, 8th most this year. So you've got a very different team heading into playoff time this year than you did a year ago when the Wolves really got hot at the right time. So what trend would you be most concerned about for Minnesota going into obviously a huge series?
I think the three-point shooting is obviously a concern, but I think when it comes down to, I mean, the baseline for all of this is the Wolves have been very lucky in terms of injuries the past few years, and they've kind of felt the injury bug, especially in March, especially if you're looking at the last month of the season. And that's been something that they've struggled with. I think also when I was looking at this last night, I was looking at the season as a whole too. And it's not like the Wolves are a worse team than they were last year. They've improved in a lot of categories. Their clutch performances, 11-7 record in clutch games compared to 20-26 last year, which is pretty decent, but also they're 7th in points per game compared to 13th last year. And then there's other factors that are totally different. But I think that the key that we're talking about right now is just the timing of everything, right? Because that's what you go back to talking to AAU coaches and they talk about, you want to be peaking at the right time. And unfortunately, they're not coasting, like you said, into the playoffs like they were last year. They were playing arguably some of their best basketball in March and April last season, and they aren't doing that right now. And I think that if you're going to go boil it down to anything, it's the injuries. They just haven't dealt with multiple injuries at one time. I'm sorry if you guys can hear that. That's my cat playing with his toy. They just haven't dealt with multiple absences. I've picked up anything just from the few years that I have been covering the Wolves, it's that like one guy will be hurt and he'll be out for a little bit and they'll compensate that. And then he comes back, they have a little rough patch for a few games, and then they figure out how to get him back into wherever he's playing on the team. And unfortunately, at this moment in time, it's just been the injuries of multiple players, key players, especially when you think about like Nas is dealing with this shoulder problem. Then you have Ant that's dealing with the knee, and Jaden dealing with his what the all of the words that are happening with the tendinopathy and things like that. And so for me, and I can only speak from like what I've been doing for work. It's like I have done more Google searches about random injury problems this season, especially at this point in the year for multiple guys, than I've ever done in covering the Wolves. And so it's something I think that they, I hope that they figure it out headed into this series. But I'm not going to like sit here and say that like I have a ton of confidence in the Wolves right now. But I think you can look at the metrics, you can look at the numbers, but at the end of the day, they've just been trying to figure out how to compensate for missing key players from their starting lineup. And that's just, what it boils down to at this point in time. So I'm hoping like health is, like we've been saying, health has been a priority, and hopefully this week does a lot for, because it's not like it's like these huge things that are horrible and this, that, and the other. It's things that just really need rest, and they need guys to be able to get back into their groove of things. And then hopefully they can figure it out, when it comes down to the playoffs.
Yeah, Jack, this series will prove whether the Wolves really do have that playoff mentality that we've been waiting to see. It feels like there's been a fatigue or a malaise at times this year that we've detailed at length on this show. But now the rubber meets the road. Now you've got the pieces in place. You've got the players that are back from injury, and you've got a playoff series against arguably your biggest rival in the league. So if there is a switch to be flipped, it's got to happen right now to undo some of these alarming trends we've been talking about.
Yeah, I honestly think that for me, it's less about the Timberwolves being able to flip a switch, just because I think that this team has proven that when games matter at the end of the season and into the postseason, that they just play a lot harder defensively. And I think we know that they're all capable of playing really well on the defensive end of the floor. So for me, it's less, I'm less worried about that. For me, it's just more about the health, right? Like my understanding is that Jaden is going to be just fine, but I think there's probably a little bit more concern about Ant's knee than what people are letting on. And I think there's a little bit more uncertainty in terms of how Ant's going to react to, just playing a lot of minutes in the postseason without a ton of opportunity to rest in between these games. So, I have no doubt in my mind that Ant's going to play every minute that he and the medical staff think he can play. But I think it's just a matter of like, is he going to be able to play at that level that we've come accustomed to seeing him play at on both ends of the floor for 40 minutes? Like, I just don't know. And so I don't know if it would be better for the Timberwolves to, play Ant 33 minutes a game and just say, go play really hard on both ends of the floor and don't overdo it. And maybe hope that someone like a TJ Shannon can kind of take some of the bulk of maybe the scoring on the offensive end of the floor. And then maybe, Ayo Dosunmu can scale up and play more and be that guy on the defensive end of the floor. So I don't know how they're going to approach it. I would assume that they're just going to try to let Ant go out there full bore and see how he responds to it. The good news, obviously, is that you've got this week off to kind of manage it. And then, you're probably going to have 2 days off after game one to stay out there in Denver and, do whatever you need. So there's a lot of pretty funny stuff going on around Twitter with calling Ant and Jaden pills and injections with what the DNVR guys were talking about on their podcast yesterday or today. So I think that there's definitely going to be some intervention to try to help Ant be able to play as much as he can. But I'm not quite as concerned about Jaden. I'm honestly most concerned about Nas, frankly, just with how his shoulder is going to be able to respond, especially being a guy that's going to have to guard Jokic potentially at different stretches if Rudy Gobert gets into foul trouble.
Yeah, Parker, you played the game. Let me ask you about fitness. So Ant, in the past, Ant has so much on his shoulders, and we've seen him get worn down. We've seen what it looks like when Ant gets fatigued, right? He can't be as explosive. He's hanging out near midcourt, kind of letting the shot clock wind down, trying to get rest on offense. And this is an injury where he's staying off his feet, right? He's not continuing to stay in game shape. Do you think that's going to have an impact late in games with his legs if he hasn't been able to practice as much as he'd like? He obviously has only played 1 or 2 games in the past several weeks.
I mean, certainly. Like, let's not forget it was 2 weeks ago where John Krasinski was telling us that this injury is very similar to Steph Curry's injury that sidelined him for several months. So let's not forget, like, this isn't some guy who's just like, oh, hobbled through a little bump and bruise. I'll be all right because I'm Anthony Edwards and I bumped back and I've bounced back from every single little injury I've had in my career. And he's kind of been Iron Man in that way. Like, this is something more, and the Wolves have obviously been vague about it, but it's going to be a management. And I think, like I mentioned about earlier, the show is about it starts from the top. It starts from Chris Finch. It certainly does. Like, I'm sure there's conversations every day with Finch and the medical staff about how rotations can look and how we can save Anthony Edwards a minute here or a minute there, or when's our media timeout coming up, or when can I burn one so we can get Ant a break. And the fourth quarter comes around, and how can we find ways to have him push through? And I'm sure there's going to be pain pills, and I'm sure he's going to find all the supplements and ways to manage it. But this isn't something light. Like, this is a major deal. And I think as we go on throughout the playoffs, and hopefully we're able to win games and advance in series, it's going to be continually managed. So as a guy who played and a guy who dealt with knee injuries and was taking painkillers before every game, you're going to feel it after the game when those things wear off. I'll tell you that much. But I think Anthony Edwards is a competitor, and I think we've seen that dog come out in him, and I think that's something that hopefully is more than what this injury is. And it's hard to say from our perspective sitting here and knowing how his knee really feels. I think that's something that I dealt with, where you have the media saying this, and it's like, no, I could barely walk the next morning. Like, what are you talking about? So I don't know exactly what it is, but I think when it comes to Anthony Edwards, he's a competitor, and we know he's going to give us all he has. So I think it's going to be something where you just got to take it day by day. You got to watch the film, right? Like, you got to see where you can get him a little break, or if he's not his best version of himself, maybe he doesn't need to be out there for that little 3-minute spurt. So I think there's a lot of adjustments that need to be had. But just like I said previous in the show, it all starts at the top. I think this is a Chris Finch playoffs, and I think win or lose is going to be on how great of a coach Chris Finch can be.
Yeah, I'll throw in with you on that. And the two games where Ant has played with this injury, Dallas and Houston, kind of look great. Maybe it's much ado about nothing. We'll see. 7-game series, it's a different story. When we come back, we'll have some fun. End of year superlatives. We've got 5, or is it 6, great categories to give some awards out. Brought to you today by Rocket Money. Have you ever opened up your bank account and thought, where's the money? Where'd it go? You're not alone. Keeping track of subscriptions, spending, and bills can get overwhelming fast. That's where Rocket Money comes in, helping you take control of your finances all in one place. Tracks your subscriptions all in one spot. So if you have 3 Netflix subscriptions, you can get 2 of those canceled in just a few taps. It categorizes your spending. You see where the money's going, helps you budget, gives you alerts. Stay on top of upcoming bills because those things just stack up. Makes everything more organized, gives you a clear picture of your finances. It's the personal finance app that helps find and cancel unwanted subscriptions. It monitors your spending. So let Rocket Money help you reach your financial goals faster. Join at rocketmoney.com/lockedon. That's rocketmoney.com/lockedon. All right, it's the annual Wolves Squad Show Awards Show. I'll be in the Conan O'Brien role, except I don't have anything funny or any sketches to perform. But we'll start off with, this is Jack Borman's request. He texted me earlier this morning and said I was being too negative. I had the dumbest loss of the year as a category, but we're going to balance it out with the best win of the year per Jack's request. So, Jack, why don't you give us a good win from this season just so we can appease you?
Just absolutely airing me out. It's crazy. Yeah. Best one of the year. I had 3 candidates here, but I'm gonna go with the craziest game I've probably ever been to, which was that comeback in overtime against Houston just about a month ago on March 25th. To give up the first 13 points of overtime and have everybody in the building leave for the most part, and then go on a 15-0 run in like 2 minutes to win the game was something that had quite literally never happened before in NBA history. And I think that will stick with me is like a moment that if the Wolves find playoff success, I think I will look back at that moment as something where things could have flipped a little bit for the Wolves and just continually finding a way when adversity just kept building and building and building. When, Rudy fouled out, Nas got thrown out, Jaden got hurt in that game and wasn't there in overtime. And the fact that, you had guys like TJ Shannon, who hadn't played much, get called into action and make some huge plays down the stretch of the game. I just thought that was, really, really cool moment to see how everybody came together and just never say die. So that takes a cake for me.
Parker, what do you got?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great one. I think that's obviously, if you look at the season as a whole, that's probably your winner. I'm going to go in a different direction with it, and I'm going to just go from a straight offensive outpour of what I saw was absolute excellence, and that's the win on over New Orleans, and it was a back-to-back New Orleans game, so you played them twice back in December. That was also an overtime game, and the Wolves scored 20 points in that overtime. I know this game doesn't mean much. It's a December game in New Orleans, but I remember watching that game, and it was one of those games where Anthony Edwards was in complete flow state. Everything he did touched to gold. He had 44 points that night, just absolutely dominated all over the court, hit 6 threes as well. So just one of those games where we saw just peak Anthony Edwards. And I think it's one of those things where as a player, when things are going your right and you're on the road and you're playing in overtime and the crowd goes quiet, there's not many better feelings. And I know Anthony Edwards was kind of just in that mode and flow state. So the game didn't mean much, but it was just an offensive outpour. So I'll go with that 149-142 overtime win against New Orleans.
I don't know. Are we allowed? Can I rip Parker for this one?
Rip it.
The Pelicans are 3-19 at the time. They're
I
in
know, but
overtime
what-
against them.
That's the most points you scored all year. Anthony Edwards is in peak flow state. You win back to back. I don't know. I just remember watching that game, and I knew Jack would take the Houston one, so I scruffled and I tried to find another one.
I don't know. That game kind of rocked. I remember watching. That was a very fun game to watch. I've got no qualms.
Thanks for the backing. I appreciate that.
Oh, well, now I sound like a jerk. Julia, what do you got?
Okay, well, obviously they broke 2 long road losing streaks in Boston and in Toronto, but I'm going to go with the Toronto game when they beat the Raptors 128-126. Ant had 30 points. They overcame an 18-point deficit. Of the 30 points that Ant scored, 13 of those were in the fourth quarter. Bones had 20 points. Jaden had 19 points. And when they trailed, that was by 18, that was in the third quarter. So they took the lead in the last 2 minutes of that game. They ended a 22-year losing drought at Scotiabank Arena. And I mean, 2004 is the last time they had won there. And so I thought that because we were watching that game at the station, and I think that was a Wednesday night. And our executive producer, she's a huge Wolves fan. She was like, I don't think they're gonna do this. And then I was looking in the third quarter and I was like, yeah, I guess I could probably go ahead and start writing my highlights for this one. And because of the streak too, we're like, no way. They had already broken the Boston streak. And so we're thinking, no, they're not going to do this in Toronto. We know how this always turns out. And then in the last 2 minutes, they turned that thing around and I had to rewrite all of my highlights, but wouldn't have it any other way because that was a great game.
I would add the Spurs game at home, 104-103. Fell behind 16-0 to start the game, down 14 entering the fourth, down 10 with under 7 minutes to go. Edwards goes off late, game winner, and then had to sweat out a Wemby miss at the buzzer. That was a really good one at Target Center, 104-103. Plenty of candidates for best win, also plenty for dumbest loss of the year. Parker, give the award. Dumbest loss.
Oh, man. I mean, there's so many tough ones. We know that the record that the Wolves had against sub 500 teams, just not pretty. But the one that I kind of go towards, and I remember discussing it with someone, is you beat Oklahoma City, and then you go to Memphis and you beat Memphis, And then and I get it, right? It's like one of those back-to-back games at back-to-back away venues. We've heard LeBron and some of these people talk about the whole Memphis trip, but it's Memphis, and it's a team that if you have the mature approach and you're doing it the right way, you got to go there and you got to win twice. And I think just coming off of the win at home against Oklahoma City, there's a lot of confidence, and you're going to go to Memphis and you're going to win both of them. So I go to that one, and it's right before the win in Toronto. So they made up for it. They certainly did. But a loss in Memphis, when Anthony Edwards has 39 points, it shows you that maybe some other guys aren't as locked in and aren't as contributing the way they needed to. So I don't love that pick, but that's my answer.
Julia.
I'm gonna go with their January 20th loss to the Jazz. They didn't have Markkanen and several other people, and they were 0-10 without Markkanen at that time, and then the Jazz just managed to win that game. So Finchie was not happy after that one, but also I think people were really critical of him and just how he played his team that night. And so the Wolves were already on a losing streak heading into that one, and to go in and lose that game. Ant had 38 points, and then no one else really did much of anything. They put up 65 points on 59 shots, so that's pretty terrible. So I'm going to go with that Jazz game in January.
Part of a 5-game losing streak, too.
Yeah.
Wolves they let things compound more this year than past teams. A lot of bad losses in those stretches. Jack, what do you got?
Yeah, Julia, that was number 2 on the list that I had. Number 1 was that November 20th first loss at Phoenix. Blew an 8-point lead with 52 seconds left. That was a cup game, supposed to matter more, supposed to play hard for the guys on the end of the bench, and they just totally peed down the side of their leg in the final 50 seconds. And Dylan Brooks missed a 3 with 52 seconds left. They had a win probability of 98.2% according to ESPN, and let that one slip away. So that was the one I think that stuck with me all year.
The Wolves compounded that loss with a collapse the very next game at Sacramento, where they blew a 10-point lead with 2:50 to go. They compounded the Christmas loss at Denver, which was, they led by 9 in overtime in that game. They compounded that with a Brooklyn loss at home. Horrible. And the Julia one, the Utah loss, they went back home and lost to Chicago right after that. So just like back-to-backs of dumb losses throughout the year was a really silly trend that unfortunately kind of became an identity of this team. Let's go back to the positive stuff. Tim Connolly, the wizard of a GM that some people in the chat are actually kind of ripping today. What was the best move he made this year? The best Tim Connolly decision, transaction, trade? Julia, go ahead and go first.
Ooh, okay. I'm just gonna go with bringing Julius and Dante in. I'll be honest. I was very critical of. I felt like the cat trade was coming, like most people, but I was very critical of especially Julius coming in just because we knew he didn't play a lot of defense. And so it's like, okay, well, how are you going to make up for that? But I think it was such a good, not only decision just for the roster and the chemistry. I think it worked out way better than any of us expected it to. But also just like the business side of everything too. By getting rid of Cat's Supermax contract, they before the CBA penalties kicked in, you avoided a lot of luxury tax penalties in that sense. And then obviously Julius came in. He had a little bit of a rough start, but then he came back from that injury and he really started firing on all cylinders. And then Dante has been really necessary to their offense as well. And I think he's a spark plug just in terms of being a member of this roster too. And so, and then obviously it improved their draft capital too. So I think that was it ended up being a much better move than I expected. And I was very critical of acquiring Julius and Dante to start. So that's what I go with.
Yeah, I'm going to go with a really subtle one. It's the Bones Highland signing. Bones Highland for $2.46 million on September the 15th, right before the preseason. That's a low-key move. It's a footnote. It probably gets a little blurb in the Star Tribune about this big, and it turned out to be a huge signing. To find budget players that can be highly impactful off the bench for a team that's pretty expensive on the front end is just enormous. And Conley obviously knew Highland really well. He was on the team for a bit last year. And to bring him in and have him in the mix and then to see what he did this year turns out to be just a huge September move where you usually don't see a lot of activity. So that's mine. Jack, what do you got?
That was mine as well, Sam. I think that he seems like a guy that now is absolutely going to be a part of this team moving forward, and to be able to, I think, maybe not a one-to-one direct replacement for Nickeil Alexander-Walker, but to be able to, just really upgrade from what Mike Conley was giving them the early part of this season, I think was ginormous. And then, again, just to find guys that really fit the culture of what you want the team to be and really enjoy getting along with everybody. I think Bones Highland is one of the nicest guys I've ever interacted with in that Timberwolves locker room. Always gives everybody the time of day, greets everybody warm. I mean, it's just like you want to go to work and be in the trenches with those types of guys, and that's been great. And I also just think that speaks volumes that a guy like Kyle Anderson wanted to come back after the Wolves helped facilitate a sign and trade for him a couple years ago, that ended up getting him an extra, $8-12 million that he just wouldn't have had access to if he just signed as a regular free agent and the Wolves didn't facilitate a sign and trade. So I think the fact that he remembered something like that, appreciated the way that the Wolves were a part of that process and wanted to come back and continue to be a part of what's going on here, I think was something that also stood out to me that was really cool.
Parker.
All right, I'm going to spin zone this in kind of a crazy way. But the 2024 draft, sending an unprotected 2031 first-round pick and a 2030 pick swap to San Antonio to trade up to get the number 8 in Rob Dillingham, and then moving that to getting Ayo Dosunmu. I think I spun zone that right. Jack can probably fact check me. But nonetheless, just the intensity, the IQ, the gamesmanship that Ayo Dosunmu brings to this roster. There were some other parts in that trade as well. We got rid of Leonard Miller, and then we picked up Julian Phillips. I think there was 4 second-round picks that we got rid of as well. But Ayo's the highlight of it, right? He's the guy that's going to be an impact on this team and on this playoffs. And I think there's people calling for his name in the starting lineup, and I don't think that's something you do, but I do think that's something where you're confident bring him off the bench and he's going to impact winning. So I love that pick, that signing. I think the trade was exactly what the Wolves needed at the time, and I think it was a roster move for this playoffs, and I think it's something that's going to really show off, and I think Ayo is going to be a big impact on these 2026 playoffs.
We've got 3 more superlatives coming up next, including the top highlight moment of the season. But first, we're brought to you by 5 Hour Energy. If you've got a sweet tooth like I do, it's a real problem. I think I ate a whole bag of jelly beans on Easter. It's tough to find the perfect treat without all the sugar. That's why the Fruity Rainbow 5 Hour Energy Shot brings that nostalgic flavor back in a whole new way. Fruity Rainbow 5 Hour Energy Shots treat your taste buds to an explosion of fruity flavor with a tasty caffeine kick. Quick, easy way to satisfy that sweet craving while keeping things simple and on the go. It's just a classic flavor, but the zero sugar could have fooled me. It tastes delicious, and it is sweet tooth approved. And it can become your go-to as well when you have that hankering. Get candy-flavored chaos with Fruity Rainbow 5 Hour Energy Shots, available online at 5hourenergy.com or Amazon. Final segment, Wolves Squad Show rolling on. We're back on Thursday with Ben Beacon just 2 days before Game 1 against the Nuggets. We'll have an even deeper dive on Denver. But we conclude with our superlatives today, beginning with the coolest highlight of the season. Jack Borman, take it away.
Yeah, I've just kind of a general note. I've particularly enjoyed Rudy Gobert starting to do the between the legs passes instead of just the normal DHO handoffs. That's been fun for me. And then the ant dunk over RJ Barrett in that Raptors game that Julia mentioned was what was particularly fun as well. And Jaden McDaniels had a couple of sweet highlights down the stretch of the season as well. So I think those are kind of what stands out to me right away.
Parker.
Yeah, I have two, and I hate that one comes in a 126-123 loss to San Antonio. But Anthony Edwards is 55 points, 19 for 33 from the floor, 8 of 10 from the free throw line. Just an outpouring of scoring in a game that could have been won in San Antonio, where Wemby played well as well. 39 points, 29 for 23, 11 for 14 from the floor. And then my second one, it hasn't been done from a Timberwolf. 2003 was the last time it was actually done by Kevin Garnett, but that's the NBA All-Star MVP. Anthony Edwards won it this year. Thought that was a cool highlight, something that he'll have some hardware to remember it.
Julia Daniels.
I thought you were going to say something else. I'm going to go with going back to that Rockets overtime win, just Julius's jumper in the paint with like 8 seconds left to go. It's just, he is a guy that plays so well when the lights are so bright, and he just plays the exact same way. Very cool, calm, and collected. And I think that was like a perfect example of him just playing the game like he always does. And I think that was something we talked about for forever. I mean, for weeks after that game ended. And yeah, that's what I'm going to go with, is his shot right there. The game winner to give the Wolves the lead and the winner of the Rockets in overtime.
So this game was a candidate for me for game of the year, and I want to give it some love. Thunder game on December 19th at Target Center. This was a national TV game. It was a great game. Back and forth. Anthony Edwards, 38 seconds to go. Crowd rising. Some fancy dribbling between the legs, step back. I think it was over Lou Dort. Drains it from 25 feet. Wolves 108, Thunder 107. He gave him the lead and the win. Great game, great highlight. That was probably one of the best crowd pops all year at Target Center. Edwards to beat the Thunder. Let's go off the court. Pettiest pregame or postgame quote on a team that had really no shortage of kind of internal drama this year. Parker, what'd you come up with?
Oh my, there was so many good ones. But I think for me, I just go from a comical standpoint, and the fact that Anthony Edwards missed a starting lineup because nature called, it just has to be up there for me. There's no pettiness to it, but it's just perfect Anthony Edwards, and it's something where I'm intentional about watching these kind of things, and Ant never comes out for the national anthem. He's always in the back somewhere. So I thought to myself, oh, he's just in the back like he always is. And then sure enough, they start the game without him, and I'm like, there had to be something. And of course, it comes out that he just had to drop one. So that has to be it for me.
Go ahead, Julia.
I'm going with, do you guys remember after that Miami game in January when Ant was like, they were like, what's the difference? Like, why? Because it was a really great team win. They were so excited about it. And Ant said, most of the time we don't listen to the game plan. When we listen to it and execute, we're pretty good. I don't know. We're hard-headed. We want to make the game harder, but we listened tonight and it worked. And I was like, okay, cool. That's what Wolves fans really want to hear right now is, most of the time we don't listen to the game plan, but we did tonight.
He's too honest. Sometimes said the quiet part out loud. Jack Borman, you were present probably for a lot of these.
Yeah, I was not present for this one in particular, but I think Chris Finch peeling back the curtain on the Thunder was awesome, and just the way that the entire NBA kind of came to his defense there, I thought was great. I thought the way that he did it was just like in a really. It didn't come off as just complaining. It was just kind of speaking the truth about like what's so frustrating about it and kind of speaking from his own perspective. And I thought that that was really cool. The other one I thought was great was just Ant telling Finchy, you don't want me to pass the ball. This is what I do. I shoot the ball. I win the game at the end of games. I think just kind of highlights the relationship that they have for between the two of them.
Yeah, I thought the actual like most dramatic, pettiest moment came when Rudy called out the coaching staff and he said, at some point, if the players don't have accountability, someone has to have accountability for the players. This was at a low point in the second half of the year when things were really pear-shaped, and calling out the effort of Randall and Edwards, I think, if you read between the lines, and then Finch snapping back at Rudy, saying that no team has success when they try to air their grievances in public, basically. That got a little bit heated. We'll end with this. Number one fan favorite, someone that just gets the people going. Julia, who you got?
Of course, we have to go with Jingles. Of course, Joe Ingles. I mean, they're losing to the Hornets. What was that, 2 weeks ago? And everyone in one section's like, we want Joe. We want Joe. You know, he's hilarious. I was talking to Mike Graw, who's their CMO, Chief Marketing Officer, and he said that Joe makes their job so easy because people love him. He's got a great personality. He's hilarious. And they use him for all of their fun videos that they have in Arena because his reactions to everything that they do are so good. So got to go with Joe Ingles, of course. I think he's a fan favorite, not only for the Wolves, but just like NBA fans in general and NBA players. You go to any game and he knows every single person on the opposing team always because he doesn't stop talking and he's hilarious.
Yeah, I think Bones takes it for me. Bones with the kind of the infectious joy and the selly, mainly because of the selly. That kind of does it for me, and the way that the bench feeds off it and the fans feed off it. Bones Highland gets that award for me. Jack Borman.
Yeah, I was also going to go with Bones. I just think that there are certain players that when they kind of go off a little bit, the crowd just reacts differently, right? And Bones Highland is certainly one of those guys, and I think his points are a lot louder than a lot of the other players on the team, and it's been really cool to see the way that everybody's really kind of wrapped their arms around him and kind of fed off of his infectious personality, like you said, with the skelly selly that he's got now, and it's just a joy to watch him interact with the crowd, and I think that's something that's only going to be magnified here in the playoffs.
Parker, wrap it up.
Well, first, I want to give Jack a shout out. He got his tweet retweeted by Matt Caldwell, CEO of the Timberwolves. So that's big business. But nonetheless, I'm going with Nick and Be Different, Ant's homies and his brother. Just the kind of the interactions that Ant has with a stadium of 20,000 people, everybody loving this guy. And he goes right to his brother and his best friend and is always celebrating with them. I think it shows his connections and just the infectious energy that everybody loves Anthony Edwards. Everybody thinks Ant's celebrating with them, but it's just with his two guys. So don't get it confused. But nonetheless, I think just highlighting Anthony Edwards in general, how grateful are we to have one of the best players in the world on our team. It's not every day a Minnesota sports fan gets to say that. So hopefully he stays around for a long time.
Thanks a lot, Parker. Thanks a lot, Jack. Check out Jack on the postcast, by the way, after every playoff game. And thank you, Julia. Check out her on Care 11. I'm Sam Ekstrom. Appreciate the chat today. Appreciate the new subscribers. Thanks for watching and listening. We will talk to you Thursday on the Wolf Squad Show.